India-Aware talks to Ashok Bihoria of IDSA to get an overview analysis over the last 2 weeks with regard to the Pulwama strike and then the strike into Pakistan-occupied Kashmir by the Indian Air Force. This later resulted in a retaliatory strike by Pakistan in which a F-16 was shot down by a MiG-21 Bison. While Abhinandan was initially captured, he was promptly released in 60 hours due to the diplomatic effects of the India government and by Modi specifically. India-Aware recaps the last 2 weeks to try and understand the strategic shift that has taken place with regard to operating in Pakistan across the line of control.
Hi sir, thank you for giving us the interview. Sir, we'll start off from the first series of event right from Pulwama. Needless to say, it seems that our CRF personals were caught off guard with such an unusual form of attack with a massive suicide van bomb attack. So sir, how is that we didn't anticipate such a transition of events with regard to Jaish-e-Mohammed doing a van attack after being done in Afghanistan for a long time?
No, you think this Pulwama incident which took place on the Valentine's Day on 14th of February at a place called Lathopora was something that perhaps our intelligence could not fully zero down on. There was some kind of an intelligence failure that is something which has been talked about quite a lot in the Indian media. In terms of Jaish-e-Mohammed, I think Jaish-e-Mohammed was very much within the radar, and the security forces were trying to bust its different centers throughout South Kashmir. And that Pakistani intelligence and establishment were backing Jaish-e-Mohammed was quite well known, because there was a pressure on them to act against LET, Lashkar-e-Taiba, because FATF, Financial Action Task Force, had already forced Pakistan to take action against LET. But Jaish-e-Mohammed was activated when LET was not being able to do its work, and a lot of pressure was on Pakistan vis-a-vis LET. So that was there, but this particular incident might have gone off radar. It happens in intelligence, there are lapses, and we should, with each incident like this, our intelligence has to be even more accurate, more mature. I think we are on the right path, and the security agencies are also trying to scan intelligence inputs even with much more care after Pulwama. But yes, this was a case where Jaish-e-Mohammed had trained and indoctrinated the local youth. This is something that we have to keep in mind, and we have to keep in mind that the local youth and are joining this militancy, which is certainly an area of concern, and we have to wake up to this reality. We have to analyze it, and we have to do everything possible to turn the youth of Kashmir away from this kind of militant activities, and that will involve a lot of engagement, a lot of political calculations that will go into the making of some policy where the people from the valley will be dissuaded to join this militancy.
Yeah. So we already had surgical strike in Uri, showing the government resolve after Pathankot attack. So sir, please tell us a little bit how Pulwama led to such a doctrinal shift in approach by using air power strike camp across the LOC deep into Pakistan occupied Kashmir.
You see, in Uri we still limited our action to LOC, just to POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir.
Yeah.
We deliberately didn't want to go into the Pakistani territory, and that was a surface operation, that was an army act. But here, I think that was deliberate. Pulwama was one step up, which is surgical strike 2.0, as they are saying, because here aerial strike was made the main instrument for taking counter-terrorism preemptive action. Our foreign secretary talked about non-military preemptive action or preemptive strike, and that is what it was meant to be, because basically our target was terrorist camps, and especially Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist camps, because Jaish-e-Mohammed had claimed these attacks. And that is why we deliberately chose the Jaish-e-Mohammed camp as our target, and the aerial bombardment that was there, we deliberately wanted to upscale our response, because we could see that Uri was not deterring enough. Pakistan was not coming to senses. They were not taking any action against Jaish. And from Uri to Pulwama also there was a qualitative shift in Pakistani way of striking terror in India. So that has to be matched by an adequate response. I think aerial strike was basically done to drive home this message that India is not going to take it lying down anymore. And two, this was basically India was trying to convey its frustration about Pakistan continuing with its terror activities, and that is why Balakot, which is a notorious camp which was set up by Jaish-e-Mohammed in the early 2000s, that was chosen as a target.
Yeah. So please tell us a little bit about how Balakot has long been a Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist training camp, and how Indian intelligence agencies managed to identify and target not just Balakot but are also involved in Chakhoti and Muzaffarabad camp.
No, actually, Balakot was long in our radar, and it was talked about in the international media, not only Indian intelligence. It was very well known, and you could see the camps from the Google Earth as well. And many Pakistani journalists had also talked about this Jaish-e-Mohammed camp in the region. There was also some other camps in the vicinity in Mansehra as well. In 2005, the Herald, the Pakistani news magazine, carried a story which said that even if the terror outfits were banned in 2002 February by Musharraf, by 2005 they were back in action, and they put out photographs of how terrorists were receiving training in these camps, and Balakot was one of them. And Balakot was very much in the news, both at the domestic level inside Pakistan and outside as well. And Jaish-e-Mohammed, you would remember in 2003-2004, they had targeted Musharraf, and there was a lot of angst against Jaish-e-Mohammed in the military hierarchy, and a lot of steps were taken to sanitize this organization. Jaish-e-Mohammed leader had gone into hiding, and he had gone underground. Then he was pulled up. He was confined to Bahawalpur for some time, and perhaps by 2005-2006, Pakistan Army had thought it wiser to at least allow them to organize these camps and carry out some training programs there, and that is how they wanted to divert the attention of Jaish away from Pakistani military. But the Jaish-e-Mohammed, the leader Masood Azhar, continued to be in Bahawalpur and direct all these activities all around, and most of his family members, his extended family members, were associated with Jaish-e-Mohammed. His brother, his nephew, his brother-in-law, all of them were a part of this business called terror. And they were active in many parts of the country in Pakistan. Bahawalpur was the north center, and Balakot was the main terrorist camp that they had set up.
Yeah. Sir, in trying to target the Balakot camp, the Indian Air Force decided to pick its old, war horse, that Mirage 2000 aircraft. So that this is the same aircraft that targeted Pakistani position on Tiger Hill and Toline during the Kargil War. That was before 20 years. So tell us a little bit why Indian Air Force has decided to take this Mirage over like newer. We have newer, weapons also, newer this thing. Planes also that Sukhoi MKI is delivering such payloads. So why they preferred Mirage?
The Mirage is a old warhorse, and Air Force, Indian Air Force has been particularly using this for its operations, and Mirage has established its credentials also as a dependable war machine, and that is why it was used. And in terms of precision targeting and all, I think this aircraft was preferred to others. So it was not a question of picking the right aircraft, but choosing the target and hitting them. And that is what Indian Air Force has managed to do.
So tell us a little bit about the electronic warfare capability and the intelligence that led to confusion among the Pakistani armed force about where the attack was going to take place. So India now has aerospace assets also that can be directed towards the camps to show maximum damage that has taken place.
No, actually, the choosing of Balakot would not surprise me. This was something which was quite predictable. But how they zeroed in on it and how they operationalized it is very interesting. If you look at the Pakistani ISPR statement, the Pakistani Army spokesperson's statement, few hours after the attack on 26th of February. This is very interesting. He says there were 3 different formations by Indian Air Force. One formation moved towards Bahawalpur. Bahawalpur is the headquarters of Jaish-e-Mohammed, where Masood Azhar is located. And the second formation moved towards Sialkot, Muzaffarabad, Sialkot sector. And third one, which was the heaviest of the 3, moved towards Muzaffarabad. And as soon as they moved, they scrambled their aircraft from the Pakistani side. They say that they engaged the one for moving towards Bahawalpur, then the one moving towards Sialkot, and these 2 formations they moved back into India, whereas the other one moved forward and they started engaging him. It was a heavier formation, there were more aircraft involved, and if you look at the results, there were 4 different targets chosen by 4 different aircraft, but there were even more aircraft involved. So as soon as they scrambled, Pakistani, they say, this is their version, that as soon as they scrambled, the Indian aircraft receded. All the aircraft, they came back. But during the process of getting back to India, they released their payloads, and the payloads hit destinations which were basically jungles, and it didn't result in any casualty. This is what their version is. But if you look at the version, you can clearly find that there was a move to divert the attention of the Pakistani aircraft towards Bahawalpur and Sialkot on the one hand, and push towards Balakot on the other. And this was done to minimize civilian casualty, because if it would have taken place in either Muzaffarabad, Sialkot or in Bahawalpur, there would have been more casualties. But here, civilian casualties. But here, you could only hit the terrorist camps. There are a lot of cogitation in the media about whether it hit the targets or not. I would regard it as unimportant, because Pakistanis, even if they have hit some targets, it was impossible for Indian aircraft to film them. And it is also impossible to get the true story out from the Pakistani media, because the Pakistani media also is very controlled. And if you look at the site where the one of the hits was there, which was thrown out in the Twitter by the Pakistani military, the same site was being repeatedly shown to the media. But there were three other targets, and Hamid Mir, one of the veteran journalists from Pakistan, had gone to, he claims, two or three of them. But whether they have hit the target or not, this is inconsequential. What is most important here, that India's will, resolve, and the capability to take the counter-terrorism war deep into the Pakistani territory, and that was the message that was that India was trying to convey. In that sense, the message has been ably conveyed, and this is something under the overhang of nuclear war, nuclear threat. India could do it. That means we have managed to push the threshold of our response quite a few notches up, and that is now taking the ball to the Pakistani court whether they will continue to perpetrate terror or rein in the jihadi machines that they have themselves floated inside Pakistan.
Sir, after the strike on the Balakot camp, the Pakistani armed force tries to conduct a raid using American F-16s armed with, AMRAAM air-to-air missile to target Indian installation base. So, sir, the failed and even resulted in the first F-16 being shot by MiG-21 Bison aircraft. Tell us a little bit about why this is so significant. What does this mean for the Americans and contracts that are in, the place sitting F-16 won't be used against India?
You must have seen Air Marshal's interview today in the morning, where he says that there is no discounting MiG-21 Bison. This is also quite upgraded one and has the capability to engage enemy aircraft, even if it is F-16. So I wouldn't comment on the why it was chosen and all, because the IAF has its own way of looking at it, and they chose it because they thought it proper to engage F-16 from Pakistani side with MiG-21 Bison. And the fact that we have shut down one of the F-16s on the other side shows that they were quite competent. And in the war, you have these casualties, you have this collateral damage, and if one of your aircraft has gone down, that doesn't mean that they were not capable. So the only thing is that in the dogfight that ensued, you took out one of their aircraft, they took out one, and in the process your pilot ended up ejecting into the territory under Pakistani control. That is how it is. So I wouldn't say that this was not carefully chosen. The target was carefully chosen, the aircraft was carefully chosen, and the counter by Pakistan was quite expected, because you took the war to deep within Pakistan territory, and it was natural that Pakistan will retaliate. But Pakistan's response was, I would say, more symbolic than substantive, because you took out a terror camp or few terror camps in Balakot. They only hit the open ground across the LOC, and they claim they did it staying within their territory. They don't say that we breached the LOC. We claim that they had come to our territory as well in the process, and that could be true, because the fact that you could shoot down one F-16 clearly shows that they might have breached LOC as well. Yeah. So in that sense, the Pakistani actions that we underplayed is quite, I would say, it's quite substantive. It's quite okay, because we shouldn't have taken it as, because it was basically a reaction from the Pakistani side for which we were prepared for, and which was quite expected. And that they took care not to provoke us, not to strike our military formations or logistics or civilian centers, commercial centers. That shows that Pakistan did not want to escalate. But the fact that we had conveyed the message that we will not tolerate terror sponsorship from your side, It's something that perhaps been conveyed well to the Pakistani.
Sir, Abhinandan was captured, and yet because of intense diplomatic pressure by the Modi government, he was released within 48 hours. What do you think really pushed to the Pakistanis to release Abhinandan, basically?
I think you have to look at it from the bigger picture. You know, the bigger picture was this: that there was a lot of pressure on, on Pakistan. The international community was weighing in on Pakistan quite a bit. You would remember after Pulwama, even the president of US came out with a statement that India's response should be strong, and the provocation has been very, very bad. So France also condemned the attack. Australians did, and the international community in a way tried to understand India's frustration with Pakistan. And also they, because this discussion on FATF was going on in February, so there was an international preparedness to take Indian action positively, and India only focused on the camp. So it didn't target any military formation or civilian or commercial center. So that really legitimized India's action, Indian action. And the fact that we called it a preemptive strike, it's something that went down well with the international community. So there was a lot of international approbation for Indian action. So that is something which would have acted as a pressure point on Pakistan, and that is why they felt obliged to or pressurized to send back Abhinandan, the pilot. And I would say that the government's ability to mobilize international opinion on the issue was something that we have to recognize and
it seems now that everybody, especially the Indian media, seems to be crying about #NoWar. However, the strategic objectives of getting Pakistan to close down its terror camp have not been achieved. Pakistan has built up the capability over 2 decades and it's unlikely to give it up. Sir, what does this mean for India to try and ramp up the pressure so that the Pakistani military to force to act against these camps?
We should not be too critical of the constituency within India which is advocating no war. War is something which is not going to resolve issues, and because both Pakistan and India are nuclear powers, war can only be fought at a limited level. You cannot upscale it to a point where use of nuclear weapons will be inevitable. So that I think the government is very, very cautious about, and that is what is also keeping Pakistan government also on tenterhooks. So they are not being able to escalate the situation because they also know that in the course of waging a conventional war, full-blown conventional war will be detrimental to their interest. So this is something that has been the major fallout of this attack, that Pakistan has also realized that its policy of waging asymmetric war under the nuclear overhang may boomerang on it. So this is something, a tight message, a strong message has been conveyed to Pakistan. So in that sense, if you look at the no war campaign that is going on in Pakistan, it is also very, very impressive. Many mainstream commentators in Pakistan are appreciating Imran Khan's position on return of Abhinandan, because they are saying that Imran Khan might have done something which was necessary to be done at that point of time, because you cannot escalate, you have to de-escalate as soon as possible. And they were saying that even if they were blaming Indian media for provocations, and they said even if Indian media is engaging in provocations, we should try to be cautious, careful. So the no war constituency in both the countries, I think we should not be worried about. And they will try to advocate a pacifist line, which is also good. because it will have impact on both the countries, and especially it will act as as an alternative to the hyper reaction that we get to see in both the media, in India and Pakistan. In that way, I am not quite worried about that. But one thing we have to keep in mind, that whether this action reaction which was there from India and Pakistan, whether that has led to a realization in Pakistan that they should not take it forward, they should put an end to this kind of use of terror as an instrument. If you look at the overtures from the Pakistani information minister, who is supposed to be very, very close to Imran Khan, that was very interesting. He said that we are going to take decisive action against all terror outfits, including Jaish-e-Mohammed. So that suggests that somehow at the back of their mind, this is there, that if we are allowing these outfits to indulge in this kind of terror activities, then this is going to be diplomatically risky, and this is going to be harmful for Pakistan in the long run. So if they are taking any action against these outfits, even if they publicly espouse something else, for example, they have been saying that the dossier that India has handed over to Pakistan after Abhinandan's return was something which was not evidence enough, and based on which they cannot arrest Masood Azhar. They will say this. This will be the public face of Pakistani government. But what they do against these elements, that will be something we will have to watch out for. If they are saying this, it should not matter much. If they are doing what they need to do, that is something that we need to keep our eyes focused on.
So this is some important question I want to ask, like how do you feel that opposition has acted during the whole time in trying to attack the NDA government or whatever the in power government, so giving the Pakistani media ample information to show the disunity among India's political parties even during a time of war?
No, I think the opposition sorry, I think the opposition has acted quite reasonably, quite well. And if you remember, immediately after Lethopora and the Pulwama incident, the opposition leader came out and said that we are with the government. Most of the opposition leaders said that. And similarly, if you look at Pakistan also, the entire opposition they forgot their differences with Imran Khan and they came together. But in both the countries, the opposition, after the war clouds have receded, the oppositions have come back and said few things which were critical of the government. In both the countries, the opposition are blaming the government for not taking them along in the decision making. This is something which has got to do with the democratic procedures, democratic spirit, rather than dealing with issues like Pulwama and others, because this is something different. India is getting into election. Pakistan has all along been divided between the pro-army, anti-army factions. So this is likely to happen. The opposition will be there to question, to ask questions about the government's policies, and the government is obliged, because we are a democracy, to answer them. So this is something which is incumbent on both the opposition and the government to take the democratic discourse forward rather than put the blame on each other. This is something that we have to constantly keep in mind.
Yeah. So this time government has fully allowed the armed force to do what they want to do. Sir, after a long time. Tell us a little bit about what the spell for the future when it comes to future attacks and India's response.
I think this is optics. This is optics that government has let the army do what it wanted to do. The Prime Minister went public and said that we have asked the military to choose a time and destination of its own choice. That is something that has given rise to this optics that the government let the armed forces do what they wanted to do, because people thought that the army was itching for action, and that we are a democracy. Our army is very much under the control of the civilian government, and the civilian government asked army to do what it did. In any other dispensation also this would have been the case. You wouldn't expect the government to go and bomb Balakot.
Yeah.
The army would have done it even in any other dispensation. But the decision that the government has taken, that we have to recognize, and that we have to give the government credit for. This is something that I have to say.
Thank you, sir.